So, hello and welcome to what is the 204th episode of the Adoption and Fostering podcast from the ANF Network, with me, Al Coates, and like a veritable Dorothy, blown away by the hurricane in Ireland, Scott Casson Rennie.
Oh, thank you for that lovely introduction, Courtesy.
Wait, well, how are you doing, Scott? Because you fled, you abandoned the country.
Can I just say, I had a Christmas gift, which was a weekend away. Well, when I say a weekend away, my idea of a weekend away is long weekend, maybe Friday
Yeah,
to Monday. My husband's idea of a weekend away is 7 days. So
it, it's it's a patented Casson. You should get a
it
trademark.
is,
The Casson
honestly.
Rennie weekend is
Yeah.
at
I'm
least
going
seven
away for a
days.
week. 4 weeks later, we're still away. But yeah, so by absolute chance, on Thursday morning, we flew out from Ireland over to Spain for a long weekend, and thank the Lord we did. Given there was no electric, there was cows flying, there was the whole jing bang was going on here in Ireland. To be fair, and apologies to any Irish people who may be listening who now have their power back. We were 2 days without power in our house. But there's still some places that actually don't have power. So,
Well, you need to reframe that because you weren't to. Your house was without power.
no, no, that, yeah, I mean, all
You,
my duck and my caviar are in the freezer. You know,
you just played hell with your frogwa, isn't it?
exactly. I had to have someone swoop in and take it away down to a secret location.
Do you have a man, like a man on speeder?
Yes, it's
To
called
Jeeves.
my 25-year-old son who was still here, who was living in darkness with no power. So I let him use our little holiday home for the weekends as long as he took my frozen foie gras down. So he did. I
Excellent.
I do not have foie gras. I do not have anything like that.
No,
But
frogwa's an evil, evil kind of thing.
that's
Well,
different.
Scott,
Anyway,
I'll tell you my little. We do have a guest here, so they're
oh yeah,
waiting
we do.
patiently.
Yeah, but can I just
Yeah,
pause for a minute? Sorry, Rebecca, because we just paused for a minute. So, Coach C, what happened last week to you?
me. That's
Yes, you.
a lot's happened. I don't. There's so many things happening.
I
I can't
know,
begin
but
to
there was
imagine.
quite a major event. Where were you just over a week ago? What happened just over a week ago that
Oh yeah, I met the children's minister, didn't I?
No, I'm not talking about
All
that.
right. Okay.
I'm talking
What
about your
then?
your your trip to A&E.
All right. Yeah. Honestly, there's so many things happening. That's off the list now.
Well, it's on my list because I haven't spoken to you since. You
Right.
had a little
Well,
trip.
shall we introduce our guest? Because otherwise, like a minute is turning into 3 or 4
All right,
minutes, and
yeah,
then
do that.
she
So,
can join
and
in and
also, she's looking a bit bored there as well. She's like, "Oh
yeah,
my
she's
God, shut up." So,
slipping into like a podcast coma, if that's a thing.
but we like her
So
already. She's got a sense of humor, so.
yeah, yeah. So in some ways, I have to apologize to my guest because she can't get in touch with me and said, "Hey, I would be really interested in having a chat about a specific subject, which we'll get to." And I said, "Yeah, that's fine." And then within three rather slippery emails, it turns out she's a guest on the podcast. So be careful what you email. That's the first lesson. So
Very.
we have with us Rebecca Govan. She is a doctoral researcher, an associate lecturer. My words are not coming out for it. An
This is
associate. I'll try that again, shall I? Maybe edit out. She's a doctoral researcher, an associate lecturer, a social worker, a parent to three children, one with additional needs who has a diagnosis of FASD and additional needs. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Al. They've all got additional needs, but it doesn't matter. It's
All
fine.
right. There's a critical mass, isn't there? When one has got them, then you might as well everyone has them.
Do you know what? I got three kids, and the thought was that it would be a bit like this is really bad. You know, when you get a certain amount of pets and you think, I've got all the pet stuff, so it doesn't matter how many pets I have, I'll just like buy, more food. I've got it all set up. But no, it's not like that at all.
I think we found our guest for Christmas.
Yeah. Oh dear. Are
My
you
kids are
the
never going to listen to this, are they? They're never.
hopefully not. No.
Yeah.
And are you the kind of person that just bags up decent clothes from the older one and then they cascade down?
Well, I've got twins, so it doesn't work
Oh
that way.
no, bummer.
No, it doesn't work. But child benefit works that way, doesn't it? In that when you have twins, you're supposed to give the older twin stuff to the younger twin, and that's why there's left. I mean, there's 15 seconds between them, so you could, in theory.
Wow.
But yeah, no. What do we do? There are a huge amount of size differences in our family. You can tell who's adopted because my little girl is like a very tiny person. Whereas the rest of us are huge. So yes,
You
that
got
that
strong
wouldn't work.
genes in the Governance.
Yeah. Yes. We're over that side of things.
Wow. I am maybe need to rethink this podcast. I have a feeling that we need to be really careful that I don't lose my social work license, nor do you, because I feel you are dangerous. You could say anything at any
I
given
used
moment.
to work for Social Work England as a case examiner. So,
Oh,
yeah, very serious matter. So just
I,
watch your misconducts.
I had a,
Watch them.
I had a social work colleague, so he was so off point with this podcast might just go on forever. I have a
That's
friend
fine.
who, if you're ever bored, you can go onto Social Work England and you can find reasons why people get deregistered, and it is
That's why I used to write those reasons. Yeah, I used to write those.
Scott, you'd love it. Some of the stuff, it's like EastEnders. It's just
Oh,
amazing.
Totally
But
you need to send
is.
me a link for that. I feel like I need to see a link for that so I can, on those days where you're at work and you're a bit like, oh, can't be bothered and just need something to look at. I think I shouldn't say
Yeah.
that.
For learning and reflection purposes.
of
Yeah,
Yes.
course,
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
absolutely. Uh,
CPD. Yeah. That's what it's for. Yeah.
but some of them, it's like, blimey, who was sleeping with who? And like, it's absolutely gobsmacking stuff, isn't it?
Yeah. It never happened in my frontline practice career.
Good.
Mine
Make
was
that clear.
genuinely quite boring, really, that way. Just went and see people, go and do an assessment, put in a
Yeah.
care and support plan. It kind of followed quite a daily routine, but no,
Yeah. Wow.
yeah,
I
stuff
feel
that
like I've
goes on.
opened up a Pandora's box in having you come on the podcast, Rebecca.
Sorry, yes,
It's very
sorry, I
exciting.
didn't add that to my resume that I didn't
No,
send you because I wasn't coming on a podcast.
exactly. Be careful what you ask for. So
Mm.
I will get back. I wasn't diverting, Scott. So I will get back to my. I had just a medical incident where I woke up and I had sort of pain, and that was it. So Scott, so
All
I'm fine
right.
now. That's it.
Okay. Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
He's
Huh.
totally under thinking it, but we'll come
it,
back to that. We'll come back to it.
Yeah,
yeah.
okay.
Oh, but you
I
did
mean,
remind me actually.
let's be honest, he didn't have brain aneurysms, so it's not as severe as that. But at the
Okay.
same time,
Is that the
it's
scale that we're working
yeah,
with?
yeah.
And
Well, I
it
mean,
is.
that's what I did. So,
Yes.
I had two.
Yeah,
So,
Yes.
I mean, you're never going to beat that. But to be fair, everybody was quite concerned about you, Coatsy. So just
Oh,
keep on looking after yourself. Is all.
yes. We all need to look after
yeah.
ourselves, don't we?
I'm now on a bread and water diet for the rest of my life, which is probably the best thing possible.
See,
Bread
I
and
told you.
water.
I told
Yeah.
you to drink alcohol. Honestly, alcohol cures everything. I'm joking. I'm joking. I'm joking.
No,
Before people start writing in, oh, jeez.
I'm allowed to look at photographs of cakes. That's the sum total of my diet. I'm allowed to. So yeah, I'm fine. But I went actually to the DFE last week, and actually I've got there are some really some interesting stuff there,
Mm.
Scott. If you're interested.
Hmm. I'm interested.
All right, okay. So we were going
I'll
to meet the
listen.
children.
I'll listen.
All right, okay.
Scott is.
Yes. So we went to the DFA and it was the adopter reference group, which meets every quarter of
That's
the.
why I'm not interested. Oh,
All right. Scott's
Still,
harboring a bit
still
of root of
hurts. Still
resentment.
hurts. Yeah, still
Yeah,
Okay.
hurts.
let it go, Scott. It's okay. And the minister was due to be with us, so we were told that because the Stockport murder kind of inquiry it's been all announced in Parliament, so that kind of slightly derailed. And we said, oh, she's only going to be 20 minutes. So they said there's only me and a few others there, and they said you can have a few minutes. You could, like think of the one thing you want to ask the minister. So we literally all had a slight like, oh, well, oh, and then the minister came in and said, look, I'm really sorry, but the prime minister said I have to come. And it was all like, this is a really odd conversation. So she came in and went, I'm really sorry, but I can't stay. I've got to go. And she went, you're all lovely people, and then nicked off. So we didn't see her. It was very disappointing in the end.
Wow.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So she was
But
forced to be with you, basically. Is that what the long and
well,
that she
yeah,
had to be there?
Well, she had to be with us for at least 30 seconds just to say hello, and then she had to go and see the Prime Minister, who apparently he gets
Oh,
first dibs on his ministers, which, is fair enough. Could have some perks of the
yeah.
job, haven't you? Um, the one thing that did come out, and this is a bit about recruitment, Scott, and you might have an opinion about this. One thing that was interesting about a conversation about how some of the local authorities put quite high bars on people's financial stability
Oh,
and
interesting. Right.
and whether people are allowed to have a level of debt or people have to have what is acceptable debt, and are people managing credit cards? Because I think lots and lots of people, and so it was seen as this is a barrier. And I poked to a couple of Facebook groups for that, and actually it was a really really big deal for people in terms of
Mm.
a lot of people struggling to really stressed over the fact that local authority said, "Oh, you've got to be debt free for a certain amount of time," or if you've been in debt in the past, you've. But I don't know.
I suppose it's equivalent to the you have to be a certain weight or and people losing weight like Billy O really worried about that for the process and whether that's a reasonable, necessary, what facts or evidence that's based on in terms of your
Yeah,
parenting or your ability to provide a stable home. I don't know. But debt is more prevalent, isn't it? More people
yeah,
are carrying
Just gonna
debt.
say, yeah, yeah. These days,
So
cost of living.
whether that needs to be adjusted and re-looked at. And also, do they do a credit check? So is it just what you would tell them anyway? I mean,
oh,
uh, that's the interesting thing for me as to how would they find that data out,
I think if
really?
we're all adoptive parents, and when I think back to my many moons ago assessment, it was just providing copies of bank statements and stuff.
yeah.
Uh, but I have to
Mm,
be honest and say that, we didn't have massive amounts of debt, but we've had debt.
mm,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
and however we worked through that with the assessing social worker is I can't remember, to be honest, because it's so long ago. But I think these days, would you not assume that most people have a certain amount of debt? I
Well,
would
Yeah,
yeah,
probably think. Yeah.
I would also assume that we're looking at people from, we're looking at a more diverse population for adoption, aren't we? So people about later in life, you might have gone through different like divorce or life circumstances that has thrown your finances completely out the window. And that you're not starting off, are you necessarily? You're not in
no,
your kind of early adult years kind of thinking with a blank slate. There might have been all kinds of reasons why you've accrued a debt.
yeah. And I
So
do wonder
yeah.
It's also
whether
like saying you're going into adoption without having experienced any trauma.
blank slates.
That would be ridiculous, wouldn't it?
And,
Sorry.
but I
I feel
also
like
thought
I'm
as well.
mocking the situation, but it's that kind of
No,
situation. I was
but
like,
well, I was thinking and reflecting on panels that I've sat on and been to, and thought, well, actually, the demographic of people who sit on panels, is it people who maybe that is an issue for them? Maybe if they're older panel members, maybe they're panel members. Because
mm,
again, one of the challenges is the amount of level of or the level of work there is in being involved in the panel. It precludes a lot of people. So do you get a certain type of person who can afford to not work and spend time? So you kind of like, is it just all part of this kind of 1950s vibe where,
yeah. And also, I think if you look at the kind of setup of some panel, not all panels, but some panels have kind of people who are, you know, kind of they're educated, they may have a bit of an income, they might
yeah,
live in a nice townhouse I'm not saying that's the case for all of them, of course I'm not, but if you think, especially years ago, like when you had a medical advisor sitting on there or a what's called legal advisor,
yeah.
before they kind of disbanded those kinds of things. But yeah, um, interesting to think that, some of them might actually not necessarily be fixated on finance, but certainly see it as, oh, well, they're not earning this much and their outgoings are this much and blah blah. I can't I can't honestly remember when I sat in panels if we really delved too much into income and expenditure. But I think if we did, I probably would have kind of made the point that, most people have debt, even 5, 6 years ago.
People
Yeah, the world's
manage the bank.
changed, hasn't it? I
Yeah.
think the world's changed in lots of ways that the adoption process possibly hasn't adjusted to. And that
Mhm.
that's what we
Mm.
need, kind of the overhaul or refresh or whatever we can call it. But yeah. I think
I mean, if you've
that's
don't get me wrong, if you've been bankrupt 5 times in 20 years, that's a bit different, isn't it? Let's be
yeah.
honest.
And
Well,
You
yeah,
know.
point
you're talking to
is,
two social workers. What?
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Talking to somebody who just sunk their savings into setting up an organization and still waiting to get some of it back. So, yeah, but you know what I'm saying? It's like, you wouldn't, you would have to have a little bit of a look into that kind of those kinds of
yeah.
situations.
Well, what people were saying in the groups that I posted it sort of raised the question was that there was a sense of social workers kind of gatekeeping that. So does it even get to panel? Is it that there's kind of just blanket rules that you've got to have some of those things that are sort of like hidden to people who are looking that, oh, our policies has always been that you're allowed a student loan because that's legitimate. You're allowed a car loan, but you're not
Mhm.
necessarily allowed I don't know.
12 credit cards. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, 12 credit cards. So I just
Or
thought,
like loads of
anyway,
payday loans or that kind of thing. But again, yeah, that's a socioeconomic reality for a lot of people, isn't it? And that it is that link to class. Again, I think that's worth asking. I don't know. I don't know. I just think it's a
That's a
bit of
good
an
so
point.
assumption about people, isn't it?
yeah, so after this, we'll man the barricades and throw down the patriarchy.
Let's do that. That reminds me of Les Mis in so many ways. When you say barricade, I just
Yeah,
want
yeah.
to start
Now we have a
singing.
flag. Big
Yeah,
flag.
that's it.
I insist you wave a flag, Scott. I insist.
I'm gonna start on my own. You
Yeah.
minute now.
Um, so Rebecca, you got in touch with me because you are. I was going to say we could
You
go
came on
down
here
so
for
many
a
rabbit
reason.
holes.
You didn't just come here and talk
Sorry.
rubbish. So
No, just didn't come on for the banter, but we'll let you stay for the banter. Um,
Yeah,
you wanted to get in touch in terms of sort of you were looking at the issue of challenging violent and aggressive behavior in children, but specifically
that's it.
children with FASD. So do you want to
Yeah,
explain what you're doing,
yeah.
and then I'm sure we can take it from there.
Yeah, so I'm going into the third year in February of my doctoral research into post-adoption social work with families with a child with a suspected or confirmed diagnosis of FASD. And I started that in February 2023. I got this amazing opportunity at Birmingham City University to have a funded PhD where I work in their social work department because I've been a social worker for 20 years this year. So I work in their social work department teaching 1 day a week, which is great. And then I do my research the rest of the week. So I'm really privileged to have that kind of opportunity. And they were looking for somebody who's a social worker and knows a bit about FASD. That was what they were kind of looking for. So I thought, well, the doors are open, so I'll walk through and hope for the best. And yeah, I've just started my parent focus groups in the past few months, and I'm seeking information from regional adoption agencies and local authorities as to what training they provide. This is in England, sorry, Scott, only in England at the moment, but I'm willing to work worldwide for any grants or subsidies. So yeah, so what training they provide to their social workers in post-adoption kind of roles, whatever that means in FASD, and then I'll be distributing. I've just started sending out a social workers questionnaire on what they understand by FASD, what their knowledge base is around that, what works in practice with families like mine, the Scots, and what doesn't, and what they need to be able to kind of improve things as they see it. And then I'm hoping at the end of it all, I've got ethical approval to speak to some of our children with FASD who've been adopted about what they think of the social work that they've received in their lives, really post adoption. So yeah,
That's huge.
yeah, yes, yes, it
it's
keeps
massive,
me
actually.
out of trouble, keeps me
Yeah.
busy.
I don't
So
believe that for a minute, actually. I keep you out of trouble. I don't know why. You're just giving up those
no,
vibes.
no, the kids get me into trouble. I blame them. It's not me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So in terms of the prevalence, because I think I saw a study recently, and it said there's a suspected that up to 75% of children who in the care system, which again is adopted children have been through it, so that's them, have been impacted by alcohol in the womb, FASD.
Yeah.
So does
Yeah.
that statistic sort of stand? Is that
Yeah,
legit?
yeah, yeah. That's one of the best we've got today. It's a while ago now, but Gregory in Peterborough that study is. So that was medical advisor Gregory in the role of really looking at the children coming through their care and assessment in terms of their exposure to alcohol in utero. So that was and those were children put forward for adoption. So that was 75%. So we know that it's really highly prevalent. We know that looking at that, and I would go with that. Really, I would.
Mhm.
We would love to have national prevalence studies. We would love to have more data. We would love to have more research, but we have to kind of extrapolate what we've already got. That's what we've got to hand at the moment. I think it's conservative. In some ways, to be honest. So let's use it. 75. So you've got a chance of having a kid with you're highly likely to have a child with FASD if you adopt. That is a reality, and this is what
Yeah.
frustrates me in the adoption process. Is I don't know about you guys, but uncertainty was such a huge theme. We were absolutely battered with the question: is can you manage uncertainty? Do you know what that will mean in your lives? Can you live with uncertainty? But there is a level of certainty that we need to talk about in terms of it is highly likely that if your child has been exposed to alcohol in utero, they will have FASD, and this is how that could look, and this is how that could present, and this is what this could mean, and this is what supports they'll need, and it is a lifelong disability, with varying different needs for different people associated, depending on how they're affected by it. But yeah, we don't really talk about that, um, in my
Yeah.
kind of experience. Yeah.
It's interesting you talk about Jez Gregory. I used to sit on a panel with Jez Gregory in Peterborough.
Jez, look at you with
I
the
know, I'm saying
naming.
movers and shakers. I think she's actually a friend on Facebook as well. But anyway,
You, you tart.
but
Okay,
no,
you
but it's
win.
it's
You
it's really
win.
interesting because the first time I ever
Yeah.
heard about FASD was from Jez, as you would imagine, because she was a medical advisor on Peterborough adoption, fostering, and permanence panels that I used to sit on years ago. I'm talking like when I used to live in that area, so many moons ago. Um, but what's interesting is when I worked for Adoption UK, I had the opportunity to put on events. And one thing that kept on coming up again, 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 again was this thing called FASD that not many people knew about. So I got Jez down. I think it was in Essex County Council, actually. I got Jez down. I got Lee Harvey Heath. I don't know if you've heard of that name,
Yeah, yeah,
Rebecca.
yeah.
Lee
He's
Harvey Heath.
down. He's down my way, isn't he?
I think
Exeter,
he
Devon
is.
way.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, I
yeah,
think he is.
yeah.
So we got him up and he gave his kind of stuff. And it really, like, it was the first time I'd ever heard of it, but it was before I knew anything about it.
Mm.
And even those kind of early days, they stick in my head because I was thinking, oh, wow, that sounds very, very kind of not familiar, but I can relate to that. I can relate to
Is
that.
this when you had your kids home, Scott?
Yeah,
Or
yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
not the
yeah.
youngest one, which is where
Okay.
the FASD thing really started to take off.
Yeah,
It just there was a lot of stuff that related, but even
yeah.
back then. So um, I think you're right, and I know we're not in England, we're in Ireland here, but the prevalence here, the suspected prevalence here is quite high as well. With 1 in 10 babies they're saying are
Hmm.
born with it. That's what the Health Service Executive are
Yeah,
claiming at the
yeah.
moment. But again, there's no national prevalence uh,
Studies, no.
studies, numbers, etc., etc. So it's really, I think that we kind of have to just go with what
What
we
we've got.
can. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And we can be shot down for that as well, though. And that's the biggest issue, isn't it? But what else do we have to go on?
No, we don't. We don't.
Yeah.
And I think if you kind of triangulate your evidence, as we do in social work so well, because we're good social workers, we triangulate our evidence. So take it from different sources, looking at other studies. We know we've got the Salford study from was that 2021, and that was done to a really high standard. Love everyone at Salford. But in terms of that, we put it together with what Jez, your mate, has come up with, and other kind of bits and pieces that people have done. And we are looking at a picture. I know Ireland's got one of the highest suspected prevalences
Yeah.
worldwide, definitely, along with South Africa, I think New Zealand, Australia, that kind of side of things. But in terms of England, I think we're going with about 1 in 20, around about. And in
which is huge.
Wales, which is not far from me, we have no data, no
Yeah,
research, no
exactly.
nothing in Wales. But we know that ACEs are higher in Wales than England. So if
So
you look at all the picture, sorry, go on.
I'm going to stop you there because I think that there might be some people I'm aware are listening who probably are
Yeah,
not even aware of what we're talking about because we've just
sorry.
sort of we no that it's my fault really because my first question should have been what is FASD? So could
It's
you
all
give
your
like a
fault.
really brief summary and also you can throw in the end what ACEs are as well. So how would you
Yeah.
define FASD to a
Okay.
novice?
Okay, I'll start and then Scott, you can
Oh, oh,
correct
oh,
me.
oh, no,
Just
no, no. You're the guest, love. You're the guest.
So we're talking about fetal alcohol spectrum disorders. It used to be called back in like the 70s fetal alcohol syndrome. That's what a lot of people were more traditionally familiar with. And it's when we started to notice in the research world, obviously this has been around for ever. But in the research world, more recently, and I know it was before the 70s, people will correct me on this, but more kind of well known in the 70s that it was a study around women that were it was Native American women in prison, and they were having babies that looked a certain way, and these babies had certain developmental delays, and this was then kind of labeled as fetal alcohol syndrome, and more research, has really occurred over the past 50 years, which makes me feel old because I was born in the 70s and I am coming up for 50. So we really accrued a lot of the medical side of things in terms of research. We've changed the name mostly across the world to represent a more kind of spectrum of disorders. And that really is about the exposure of a fetus in utero to what's called a teratogen of alcohol. And a teratogen is a really toxic substance to a fetus, and it stays via the placenta in the fetus's bloodstream for a lot longer than other kind of toxins, drugs. Alcohol is known to be particularly potent, and that can affect that fetus in different ways depending on a huge amount of variables. So that woman's health, how much alcohol is ingested, when it's ingested in the pregnancy, and we obviously don't know the ins and outs of that because we're never going to do any live research. It would be completely unethical. So we're never going to
Yeah.
know the ins and outs. But what we know is that no amount of alcohol is safe in pregnancy. That's the bottom line. And there's been countries that have been saying that for a lot longer than in the UK. I don't know about Ireland, Scott, but we've only really just come to the party to say clearly to women, no amount of alcohol is safe in pregnancy. And we are not talking to women only that are binge drinkers or dependent. We are talking to women across the board. We have a huge rate of unplanned pregnancies in the UK still. So we're talking about exposure to alcohol that women didn't even know they were pregnant. And this is not, we really need to get away from the blame and shame and the judgment around this because it inhibits discussion, it inhibits education, and it inhibits us all moving forward with this. So that's FASD in a nutshell, I think. Scott,
I would
anything else?
Scott, I just need to say if Rebecca and Tris ever get in a room and set off, we'll be doomed, won't we? They'll just be like they'll just this whirlpool of
I'm just
knowledge
thinking
and information
Rebecca needs to come to our conference in May. That's what.
and do a turn.
In May, what, to Ireland? Oh, I'd love that. I went to Ireland on my bike once.
On
Did
your
you not
part.
see me? Did you not
No,
see me pass by on my bike? I was going so fast. That's why.
yeah, I'm sure we'll talk about this again. But yeah, May the 22nd, you'd be more than welcome to come
I
along.
will make a note in my
Ireland,
very
yeah.
hectic
Um,
schedule. I'm very important.
and it's funny because you said there, it's about the kind of this has been around for a long time, and we've had our research. I'm not saying our research isn't kind of backed up and stuff, but actually there was mention of prenatal alcohol exposure in the Book of Judges. Book of Judges.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
All those
Yep.
moons ago. So, it's
In the
not
Bible.
something in
Yes, in the Bible,
the
in the
In the
Bible.
Old
Bible.
Testament of the
Yes,
Bible. Yeah.
absolutely. And yeah, yeah. I'm not going to add any more than that because I'm not a social worker and I'm certainly not a researcher or
No.
any
You're a
valid.
parent, and that is, yeah,
Oh
that's
yeah, I
valid.
know. Yeah,
And
Yeah, it
so
is.
I'm intrigued by the kind of the focus then of your study, which is about the support that adoptive parents are getting, receiving. But you mentioned before as well about the preparation pre.
Mm.
Do you think, and maybe I'm sort of thinking, and I can't remember one word, but again, this is 10, 15 years ago.
Mm.
What anecdotally, or do you have evidence to say that families are being prepared in terms of
Mm.
those statistics? If there's 10 people in a room, eight of them should be told. Eight of them are probably going to have a child who's impacted.
That's a really good way of putting it. Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so the crap answer is no, and then we move on. But the better answer is, so what my kind of, again, it is anecdotal because I've only just started gathering information from a parent carer focus groups. But what I would say is I have parent carers who adopted like maybe 15 years ago and ones that adopted last year. So we have a good spectrum, of what's going on in that kind of adoption assessment type period. And I should really stress that the facial features that people talk about in relation to FASD, the sentinel facial features that were first recognized back in the 1970s and labeled as fetal alcohol syndrome, are not experienced by the huge majority of children and adults with FASD. They are absolutely not present because they only come when you're exposed to alcohol during a very short period of a pregnancy when your face is forming. They are very specific to alcohol exposure, so that in the diagnostic guidelines, those would be a guidance towards diagnosis. My daughter has the facial features, absolutely, but she's one out of 100. It
Right.
really is that needle in a haystack kind of thing. So the reason I'm stressing that is what people are saying to me is that we're still harping on about that in the
Yeah.
pre-adoption training. And that really is a red herring for parents because
Yeah.
then they're looking at profiles. And I know it's like the worst dating agency in the world, those profiles, isn't it? When you flick through and you think, oh gosh, does this kid look like it's got FASD? Do they look like they've got it? No, you absolutely wouldn't be able to tell. And it
Yeah.
really is it's unhelpful. I think it's based on out of date training, knowledge. People need relevant. We are moving forward in this area all the time with the research on the medical side. We've also started moving into the social side of things as well with research. I've got, a few colleagues now in contacts across the world and across the UK who are researchers, but not, medical people. And we are moving forward. So people need their training updated all the time. We need to regularly update people, and they haven't been. And this includes foster carers as well, who are we're meeting with them as adoptive parents. We're seeing them as absolutely people that are going to give us that information about the child that we're looking to be matched with, or we are matched with, aren't we? And we're thinking, what this person says is amazing and so helpful. I've got to suck it all in. And then they're saying about the sentinel facial features. And one really important thing to say about sentinel facial features is that in different ethnicities, so the three sentinel facial features that are particularly relevant are a smooth philtrum here, where you've got this little fold here, shorter parable fissures. So it's this bit of your eyes is shorter. And what's the other one, Scott? Oh God, there's three. See, it's late now. Anyway, and
The head.
a
Yeah.
thin vermilion border here. So your lip here is thinner, but in different, there is things with your ears and there's all of
Yeah.
that.
But
But
yeah,
those are the three kind
that's
of headlines.
yeah.
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 So with those three, in different ethnicities, those are all different anyway. So if you're advised as a prospective adopter of a child from a different ethnicity, or your ethnicity, but the foster carer is looking at white
Yeah.
children's pictures of sentinel, there's no relevance really to that discussion anyway. So contextually, it's not a helpful piece of information or advice. Out of
Mhm.
all the things you could say about FASD, sentinel facial features is a very small part of the book.
Very small. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
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 Um, so, so what we're hearing is that people are not necessarily being given that information. They're told it's a thing. And the way
Mm.
you can tell is you can look at a profile. So if people are, I mean, I'm sort of, I feel like I've heard people talking like that. I can't think where I've heard that, but people sort of having that thing like they didn't look like, or they don't look like,
They
or
didn't
this,
look
this,
like it. Yeah, yeah.
um, and it's
Or you would,
making me
or sorry,
think,
Al, to interrupt. You would know, and it would be very severe. Like it would be evident, it would be obvious.
yeah,
Whereas we now know that really the narrative around FASD is the majority of cases is a hidden disability,
Yeah.
and that you wouldn't know. So yeah, sorry, Al, to interrupt.
no, no, but then it leaves people in this, does it leave families, all families, regardless, I guess, in this really murky position where they might have a suspicion or they might be absolutely oblivious. So they're looking at things like behavior or just the child's health, and then they're kind of attributing it to something else.
Yeah, we know that we know that kids are getting those and there's so many co-diagnoses with FASD as well. I'm not discounting or disparaging them as well either, but we know that autism and ADHD is very well known, very well talked about, and that's great. That's fantastic. I have an autistic child, and that support and narrative around that is very helpful for him and for us as a family. But if he's all adopted and we know he's been exposed to alcohol in utero, and again, there's a whole debate about how we would know that and what information we would get about that. Obviously, I understand that. But if we knew that, and we've got his diagnosis with autism and ADHD, then really it's really worth looking at the FASD, and it really is worth looking at that first and foremost as a diagnosis, I would say, because you're talking about a brain that I wish I could say the nice word, which I've made up in my own head, because Rudyard Kipling made up words the whole time and got away with it. So I'm calling it differented. The brain's been differented, but you could take away the niceties and call it damaged. And once you've got a brain that has been differented in that way, all the neurodiversity and all those other things that are going on with it have to be accounted for in that context and with that first and foremost in mind. But I think we're working back to front still, just because of diagnostic pathways, knowledge, resources, understanding, advocacy, all of those things. We're getting the FASD diagnosis later and later and later in kids' life. My daughter's just been diagnosed at 6, and like I said, she presents as evidently disabled,
Yeah.
and with the facial features, she meets all of the very clear criteria around that. And we've only just get a diagnosis after 4 years of waiting and seeing. So
Uh,
so people that have those other challenges are getting it later and later and later, and then those early intervention periods are lost when you could do so much to make a difference.
so, I mean, I'm not aware of the early interventions. I'd be really interested to hear about that as well. So what, because I just took it that it was a brain injury and that was, you kind of just have to go with it.
Yeah, to a huge extent you do. Yeah, you
Yeah.
do. And I think this is where,
Scott's looking
yeah, you kind
slightly
of do.
Find
harrowed
you
by the
find
experience.
alternative ways of parenting. That's
Yeah,
how I would.
alternative ways of parenting is what I should say. I should also say I've never practiced social work with children. Let me be really clear on that. So I've always worked with adults. So when I talk about interventions, it might be completely different to what a children's social worker would talk about. So for example, things like, yes, you can't, and this is where I think perhaps the kind of the information we get and the narrative around neuroplasticity and how we can reconnect neurons, and we can do this wonderful thing through our parenting. We're going to do all of this. We need to really be clear with people about what's possible, because the blame and the shame that they then feel and internalize as parents, that, oh God, I'm failing the whole time at this. This
Mm.
isn't working. And a lot of the interventions that I believe, and I am getting feedback from my parent carers in the focus groups about, are very language heavy interventions that we're talking about with our kids, about like, oh, let's sit and talk about this behavior. I know we would say it differently, but what we know about people with FASD is that they very often have a huge difference between their receptive and expressive communication. So we know that they will be, has Scott fallen asleep? He's gone. Oh
No,
God, I'm so sorry.
he's been called away for a second, so
He's not
don't
the
worry, just
first. He
keep
won't
going.
be the last that I've sent to sleep. We know that our kids with FASD are often coming across like they understand what you just said, but very little of it has been understood. We know that their comprehension is so much lower than their expressive language. So they will repeat, they will, my daughter, they use the word echolalia. Is it, when you say things and you think, oh, you've understood, but
Yeah.
really it's just that repetition. So there's not much understanding or very little, obviously different for different adults and children with FASD. But we know that if we're trying something that relies solely on language as a way of working with that child, that's a problem. Whereas the things we can change are the environment.
Yeah.
So, for example, my daughter and it is well known for children with FASD to have sleep issues, very disrupted sleep, which again is a huge stress on any family, on any
Yeah.
parent not getting sleep. But what we've done now, and again, it goes against the grain, doesn't it? It's really hard. We've removed everything from her room, everything. And I felt awful. I looked at it and I thought, oh God, it looks like really bare and clinical in there, but she has never slept better. She has never slept better. And every night she'll ask for like a certain teddy or one, two things or a book or something, and she'll take that in with her, and then it's bedtime, and that's fine. But you can change your environment. You can do that. You can keep words to a minimum. You can do that. One of the things with nursery we found was that they did the very much kind of natural themes thing. So they changed the whole nursery. There's like a flipping tree on the way in. There was fish over there. There was sparkly starlights over here. I couldn't get her in the room because her brain was just constantly distracted all the time and trying to process one sensory input and then another. We know that sensory interventions often work for kids with FASD, and that can mean different things for different people. But on the Adoption Support Fund, we know that you can get sensory therapy. I know it's patchy across the country. People are saying to me, I was told I didn't have a chance of getting that. Or again,
Mm.
it's is that a policy? Is that a procedure? Is that what people are saying? I don't know whether that's a formal or an informal thing. But there are things that help our kids to regulate better so they can receive information better and feel safer and more in the moment to be able to keep calm. And that then influences a whole family's life, doesn't it?
Hugely. I'm intrigued then because your research is looking at post-adoption support. So
Yes.
is this knowledge what, well, you as you say, you're just at the start of finding out really, but is there a sense that the workforce knows this?
No.
Because right. Right. So so we've
So
sorted
yeah.
that out then.
Moving on. No, and again, I am a proud social worker for 20 years, and we have had variable experiences as social work as a family. I've given them numbers now because we're on number 9, social workers. So I don't think we've done anything, but we know we've got a high turnover of staff in the profession. That's a massive
Mm.
issue, isn't it, in terms of knowledge retention, experience, understanding this highly complex, set of needs, condition. So we're not retaining that in the profession. We're really struggling with that knowledge anyway. I think being passed down or shared by peers and teams, and all the way that we propagate knowledge that isn't necessarily through training that is still really valid. So no, people aren't saying that they're getting social workers that are knowledgeable about FASD. The ones they are saying that they're getting that know how to help and what to help with is not that they know about FASD, they know about disability. They come from a disability team background. And that's
Right.
where people are saying to me that they get useful social work. They get useful social work not from post-adoption, but from social workers either situated within a disability team within a local authority or who have been and have moved to post-adoption. They know the resources, they know what's out there, they know what works for families with a disabled child, and they strive to get those services. But we know that getting our children with FASD, whatever it is, I don't want to use the word classified as disabled, but through to disability teams seems to be entirely different in different areas of the country, if you can do it at all, you know.
Oh, I mean, the more I think about it, the more slightly overwhelmed I am by the whole problem. And it's also making me
You've
reflect
only
on my own
been dealing
children.
with it for 20 minutes now. I've been
I know. Imagine how Scott feels.
Scott and I.
Yeah, Scott and I. Yeah, he has, and the pillow talk at his house. Honestly, I would imagine it's shocking.
Don't
Um,
don't even go there.
um, I don't know. Scott, you probably have questions, so I don't want to hog all the questions.
See, the thing is, I don't have questions because everything that Rebecca's saying, I'm like, yeah, 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 yeah. And I think that it's what I did find interesting there was you say about the kind of disability side of it, because it is a disability. It's that's what it is. But I think there's more of a focus on the kind of neurodiversities of disability than
Yes.
there ever has
Yes.
been before, and I think
Yeah.
that's potentially a good thing but also not such a good thing because I think that there's this kind of thing about diagnosing without properly diagnosing. Oh yeah,
Mm,
well, I'm just plucking stuff out of the air here. Oh yeah, well, they might have a bit of OCD or there might be a bit of ADHD and I think that's dangerous for people who are not qualified to make those kind of
yeah,
mm,
diagnoses. And I think that's because actually, as a parent, if you don't know what it is that's wrong with your child, you hold on to that one thing that a professional will tell you, and
mm,
that can be quite dangerous in the wrong
mm,
hands if it's not done properly. That's not to
mm.
say that people are doing that. I'm not saying that everybody's doing that, but I'm just saying that, especially when it comes to FASD or autism or, all these conditions that are kind of a neurodiverse kind of or a neurodevelopment. Blah, blah, blah. It's getting late now. I'm losing my neural
That's
words.
okay.
But you know what I'm saying? It's like
Yeah.
it can be quite dangerous to kind of go down that route without actually doing it properly.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
however, there is an awareness of it, and I think that's a good thing. I do think that's a good thing because actually,
mm,
and we say this, we used to say it in adoption, if you went into school and trained teachers on how to support a child who's adopted or care experienced or in kinship, that actually you will be looking after the rest of the school population as well.
yeah,
I think that's a very similar thing with neurodiversity, isn't it? Uh, we kind of schools and these kind of traditional environments are still not equipped because of the training that maybe teachers or whoever it is receive when they're going through that training. They're not
Yeah.
equipped to deal with
Yeah.
these kinds of things, and I think that's it's quite an important thing. So yeah,
Yeah, I
mm,
think that multidisciplinary approach, so that's, different professionals working together because we know that children with FASD, adults, and I do want to keep adults in the picture because I'm an adult social worker, but also because we need to consider this is a lifelong disability. We're telling a story that people are experiencing, and social workers need to know about through their whole careers. They will always have a caseload with somebody with FASD on it. They will never have a caseload with that. That's my view.
yeah.
So in terms of what was I saying? I'm losing it now, like Scott is.
It's- Well,
Uh, so social workers.
awkward pause.
yeah.
I'm
Ask
not
us
giving.
another question now.
I'm not going to throw you a line. Um, no,
Oh, evil, evil.
it just it feels it's like a huge topic, and actually, that this is why this whole podcast's just about the topic because it is just massive. I mean, to do an hour on it feels like we're only just making people
Yeah,
understand that it's a thing. But one of the reasons you got in touch with me, I think the primary reason was that in terms of children with challenging behavior in terms of violence and aggression. So
yes, yeah.
what was your why did you get in touch?
Yeah, okay.
Why
Yeah, I
did you
love
call
that we
me?
In the last 5 minutes, we get on to the bit I want to know about.
No,
Here
no,
we
no.
go.
We can
Yeah,
give
I
you a
see
full
what's
10. Don't
happening
worry. Knock
here.
yourself out.
Hold on. I've lost you. Your picture's gone. Hold on. Here I am. Right. So yes. So my parent carers are saying a lot about, and I'm sorry, I don't know what to call it. What do we challenging parent? Challenging. That's the whole thing. I don't even know what words to
That's a
use.
whole podcast. Well, I mean,
Yeah.
it's commonly known as child to parent violence, but
Yeah,
there's lots of
that's
people who are
what I'm
uncomfortable with
reading.
that.
Yeah, I completely get that's got a whole kind of thing to unpack. So I'll call it that, and I do apologise to people
Yeah.
that wouldn't agree with that. So child to parent violence and aggression is something that people are saying a lot about and has been really impactful in my focus groups. Um, and where I feel like in practice for want of a better word, the failures are most profound.
Yeah.
So people are reporting that their children are extremely impulsive, very disinhibited, go from 0 to 100 in however many seconds, and that as they're getting older, this behaviour is increasing around throwing things, hitting, spitting, screaming, shouting, verbal abuse that tends in some cases towards the misogynist, which is interesting to me. So yeah, the women in my focus groups, and like any research, I have struggled to recruit men for my focus groups, so I do have to own that as a limitation of my study, that it is biased towards women because that's the majority of the people
Is the study
attending my
still
focus.
open? Can people still join?
No,
It's all shut.
sorry.
Oh,
Yeah,
well,
sorry. I did
you missed that
try. I
trick, didn't
tried
you?
to get the guys on board. I tried my
All right,
best.
it's fair enough.
I have got a couple of men contributing. So yeah, that's the best I could do. But yeah, but so what I'm hearing is that this can take many different kind of ways of children expressing or behaving in this
Mm,
way, and that for families it turns into your home is a very unsafe space, and you know that this is your thing. We have experienced this at home in terms of our lived experience, our personal experience, and when I see it in my daughter, because of her, she is significantly cognitively impaired. She is learning disabled, which not everybody with FASD is by any means. But when she expresses this behaviour towards me, and it is mostly me as a primary caregiver, there is I can't see any thought behind it. I can't see any
mm,
purpose in us deconstructing that behaviour and having a chat about it, or that it is entirely impulsive, entirely in the moment. It's usually, I think, around sensory overload and the need to kind of I'm using the word somatic more and more as I move through this research, get out of her body a need to express something and feel something in her body and out of her body. um yeah, so it's eye poking, it's slapping, it's pinching, it's pushing. Now she's 15 kilogram and I weigh a little bit more than that, so I'm okay right now. But what I'm being told from, and I know you do NVR, from I guess that perspective is to kind of not engage. I don't know. You could tell me to turn away, to do all that, but I'm delivering personal care. I'm delivering personal
yeah.
care at these times, and that's usually when she finds the touch and it's all too much, and that's when she does these behaviors. But we are working with our kids in ways that we can't necessarily not carry on doing what we're doing, and it's scary because I think I'm going to get my eyes poked out. So that's kind of where I was coming from, is do traditional, or not traditional, but do the kind of more mainstream approaches to this work for our kids? I'm not sure, because a lot of the adopters are saying they've been on that training. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I was coming from.
Well, I mean, Scott's probably the expert because I know that that's something that you've got direct experience of in terms of, challenging behavior
Mm,
from some of your children.
some.
I'm being delicate, sensitive, social worky.
I mean, as you were talking there, Rebecca, it's just, I mean, God, blimey, if only we just had that magic wand just to be able to work out the root cause of it,
Yes.
as in what started it and
Yes.
then how it ends. Because I mean, I have no, I genuinely have no understanding of how it used to start.
Yes. Yeah. But
And that's
that's
a
the
really hard thing.
question. Yeah, but that's what we're asked, isn't it? Identify the trigger. What's the trigger?
Yeah.
And I don't know where that's getting us. That's my kind of
Yeah.
Mm.
query.
And I think that, I think for our family specifically, we were in denial for so long that it was happening because it was like,
Mm.
oh, what sort of parents are we that we're causing our child to be like this? You
Yes.
know, I'm not saying anybody lied before anybody starts writing in, but there were certainly some signals from stuff that was said prior to placement that we should have should we have
Yeah.
picked up on? I don't know if we should have picked up on it because we weren't the ones that should have been doing
Picking
that
it
work.
up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think
Um,
you're when you're prior to placement, you're in love, aren't you? And we all know when you start a new relationship, you don't hear any of the bad things about that person or the difficult
Yeah.
things or the character flaws. You're impaired. You're literally your endorphins are running through your brain at a rate of knots. It really is somebody else's job
yeah.
to really bring that to your attention because you're not picking up on stuff that you otherwise would be. I think that's definitely a fact.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that, I mean, the most of the parents that I speak to, even now, I'm in a different country, but FASD is the same thing in whichever country it is. There is that element of kind of, I think we try and deal with it in our own way without the positive supports that we could be getting. So, you know, training on how to manage physically that behavior. If
Mm,
if it's all gone to SH1T and
mm,
things are getting broken, the cat's been kicked and we're being kicked and all that sort of
yeah.
stuff. How do we control? And that's not there. It's certainly not here there in
Mm.
this country. I still don't think it's there in the UK. And the kind of the advice that Alan and I used to give when we were out and about doing our little talks, years ago before he did all these research and all that sort of
We
stuff.
became really important,
Yeah,
is
and
what you're
got his.
saying. Yeah,
I
yeah.
think he
Yeah.
had his MBE then, but he wasn't as important then as he is now, obviously.
Wasn't conceited like I
Um,
am now.
um, but the one piece of advice that I picked up on early days was, the police thing. Not everybody wants to do it.
Mm,
Actually, it's been a huge thing for us because it did. I think that and maturity stopped it. So, when our youngest got
mm,
to a certain age, I think even he realized that he was actually getting into a kind of, a place where he didn't want to be either. And I know that's going to be different for each child because they're all growing at different, chronological ages versus developmental
mm,
and all that sort of stuff. But I think as parents, it's, certainly parents and carers, it's certainly that openness to be able to talk about it in a non-judgmental, non-shaming
mm.
way.
Yeah.
Maybe a week after it's happened.
Mm,
Because let's be honest, you're not going to talk about it even the next day, are you?
no.
In most cases, because you can't, because it's just
Yeah.
going to, it's
Yeah.
still going
It's
to,
it's raw.
it's
Yeah.
very raw. So,
Yeah.
I don't, I just wish we had that magic wand. I
Yeah.
so wish we did. And,
Yeah.
if there's somebody listening who has that magic wand, then feel free to send it in.
It would be
Come here.
Galinda, the
Yeah,
good
exactly. Yeah,
witch.
absolutely.
Um,
Um,
well,
yeah,
I have thought long and hard about this, and interesting because I've done the Churchill Fellowship. I don't think there are no silver bullets. That's just the bottom line. There is no solution, and I think ultimately, I think one of the challenges we have in the UK is that a lot of money has been thrown at supporting families, and I'm not sure that it's always hit right. So I think a lot of people have had NVR,
Yeah.
but I'm
mm,
not sure they've had NVR. Like a lot of people have had Theraplay, and I'm not, they've not had
Yeah.
Theraplay. They've had a version of
Yes.
it.
A
version
So,
version
of,
of,
yeah.
yeah.
so that's one caveat. I think as well. For me, that you look at really good models where families are supported. So I would say, like with Scott, what Scott would need, what any family like your family would need, is to someone who is trusted to come in and go, right, let's write a risk assessment. When
Mm,
it goes down, what we're going to do, who are you going to
mm,
call? Who are the people who will come and help you? Let me go with you to the police. And let's have a conversation with them. Say, look, if it gets really sketchy, we're going to call you, but this is what we want you to do, and this is what we do not want you to do. And sort of writing like a safety plan of people you can
Yeah.
call, and really practical, tangible things, and that immediately lowers the temperature, which
Yes.
immediately means you're not responding out of that
Yeah.
immeasurable level of stress. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
you're changing the environment, you're changing the people in the system, because
Yes.
the your ability to change a child is really limited. But you
Yes.
can, so
But that we're not sold that though, Al. I genuinely
no,
don't believe we're sold that truth, is that your ability to change the child is genuinely limited. As a parent, you can only do so much and expect so much of yourself. And I would absolutely concur that there is many huge amounts of money going into a system where the predominant interventions are therapeutic parenting based interventions. And I completely understand they have their place. I struggle to find an evidence base for them. I do. And please send me stuff, guys, if you if you've got
well,
anything, because I can. And yet hundreds of thousands of pounds are going into very individualistic approaches. And I think we have stuff to learn from other cultures. I own myself as white British culture around. Is it an expectation that our kids can be parented by one or two people in terms of their entire experience of growing up? And
mm,
how do we build support networks where, when things get tricky at home, you have got someone you can really rely on to call? Because we're not getting those
yeah,
support networks
which
either.
I would argue, like a proper NVR intervention, group work works for some people, but actually a genuine intervention would be me coming and sitting in your living room, Rebecca, and going, right, tell me who are the people.
Yeah,
Who are the people who are helping? And actually, who are the people who are not helping? Like, tell
yeah,
me about your mum or your sister or your neighbor. Do you want, how are we going to, because I think one of the challenges with violent aggressive behavior in the home is it fractures relationships
yeah,
so it isolates people. So NVR looks to rebuild those relationships and help those people understand why you're parenting a certain way. It looks
mm,
to build a peaceful home,
yeah.
but it's not doing it through what can often be, oh, I'm going to be getting to really sketchy. Shall I say something and get myself into trouble? I think
Go
sometimes
on.
there's a bit
I
of
think we've
cult of
already been there, haven't
personality.
we?
Well, I think
Mm,
there's a cult of personality around some therapeutic models.
mm,
And I think
mm.
that, and I'm so, I've sat in rooms desperate, probably like all of us have, and thought, if you told me to paint my ass blue, I would paint my ass blue to fix this problem.
Yeah.
Mm,
And the danger is that someone like me gets up in the front of a session and goes and tells three funny anecdotes and gives you a
mm.
witty PowerPoint, and you go, I'm going to go home and try that. And then within about
Yes,
10 minutes, you go, oh, I can't be like Al. I can't be like Rebecca. I can't be like
yes,
Scott. And
yeah,
you come away worse. And I
yes,
think
yeah.
I am livid about that.
Yeah, and we need to stop training in those ways. I genuinely agree with you. We need to have packages of training where there's some kind of a, yeah, absolutely knowledge giving kind of psycho educational piece around it. I get that, I really do. But we also need the follow up with all the preceding or the during of coaching, support, one to one in your home, because every parent should have the right to say, that's not working here. That's not working here. Tell me something else. Tell me something different. Let's have a look
Yeah.
at this. Let's adapt it,
Yeah.
because our kids are all so different, and it is so easy for us to internalize that failure and that sense of blame and
Mm,
shame, and then further isolation and fractures occur, and we don't trust those people anymore because they sold us, snake oil. So
Yeah.
we're not going back
yeah.
to them,
And
and
yeah.
you don't
And
reach out.
I would say that's an absolutely valid point, because what if it doesn't work? What is the next step? Because you've got somebody who probably isn't meaning to be, but could be potentially judgmental, going, "Well, you haven't done it right," or you haven't, that kind of
Yeah.
effect. When in actual
Yeah,
fact, you've done it bang on because
yeah,
you want to make this right, and it just
yeah.
hasn't worked, and
And
you need
this
to.
is the challenge for social work, and I own this. And I think that as social workers, we are signed up to be reflective, in our practice and our decision making. And I call it the Holy Trinity: attachment, trauma, and therapeutic parenting. I am in no way disparaging any of those concepts or theories, but let's just question how relevant they are and how predominant they should be in every single intervention in this space, because they do not take center stage for every family. It's not
No.
every family's core issue. And when you're sold attachment over and over again as the core issue of your family, instead of maybe, like I said earlier, starting with that brain-based disability model and working out of that, you start to shift some of that blame and shame. You start to build connection, you start to build relationship, and you start to communicate effectively as a social worker in that family's life. Because until you do that, there's nothing authentic going on. You're not
No.
really working with that family. You might look like you are, and you might even feel like you are, but I tell you now, they're not feeling the difference and they're not seeing it in their family's life.
Yeah.
So I think we need to question ourselves, and that's hard because
Yeah.
those have been the core tenets for so long.
Uh, yeah, I mean, I'm sort of immersed in this for the last few months, looking at doing the Churchill stuff. So speaking like to people, places like Interwoven Connections that have got a huge community of like thousands of people, and how they support those community those people. And there's a sense very strongly, and that's one of the recommendations of my fellowship, is that you can't put people on 8-week courses from a standing start and then expect everything to be fine. That actually this is a lifelong commitment to support.
Yes, yes,
That we need to build a community of support, not a oh, have you had the intervention, or and probably like you, the amount of people have come to me and went, oh, I did NVR, nah, it didn't work for us. And I kind of, the
yeah,
fact you've even said it like that makes me think that you probably haven't had NVR,
yeah,
because the NVR
yeah,
NVR is sitting with you between me and Mrs. Coates and going, what do we want from our children, and then realizing we want something different, and that
yeah,
actually we're at loggerheads, and that's the
yes,
issue, that the child
yes,
is falling between this huge chasm between us. And
yeah,
you know yourself, I've never fallen out with anyone like I have out over Paul or over the kids, and
Yeah.
because
Very
the
true, isn't it?
stress and
Yeah.
strain, and
Yeah.
me
yes,
looking at her going, I can't believe you just said that. I can't believe you're doing this. And her looking at me going, you're an idiot. Why did you say that?
yeah,
And
yeah,
then us, where do we go? Because the people we love, we're angry with as well, and don't feel that
yeah,
they're backing us up. And you
yeah,
get the families just collapsing inwards. And the
yes,
rate of divorce, the rate of separation, the
yeah,
phenomena of adopters, then there's this sort of unspoken thing where this one wanted to adopt and this one went along with it because they thought it would
yeah,
be a good idea, and then all of a sudden
yeah.
5 years down the line the one's going, I did not sign up
Not
for
for
this.
me. Yeah, yeah,
Oh, you've got me on
yeah.
a rant there. You came on as a guest.
Sorry,
Honestly,
Al.
I could keep going. I'm gonna have to
Sorry.
have a breath. Oh,
Yeah.
I'm just going to shout out to Maud Champagne if anyone is interested. She is
oh,
looking at FASD and this area. I think she's one of the very few people that is into connecting these topics. She's not Maud, is she? She's Maud because she's French Canadian, and I
Dr.
met
Mood
her.
Champagne.
Dr. Mood. She is
Okay.
absolutely wonderful, and she's really great in this. So if you want to read anything, her tornado in the family research
Spot
piece
on.
is really helpful. Yeah,
And
yeah,
So in my
it's interesting. There's all this research going on into FASD at the minute as well, because I'm hearing of all these kind of FASD Ireland. We're doing some research at the minute with the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland with Dr. Jolantha Burke. And we're also just about to start some with the University of Galway as well, and it's all specifically on FASD as well in Ireland. So it's great to see all these things going on, because actually there will be a day where they all kind of
coalesce.
yeah,
come together,
Yeah,
and then it's interesting what we were saying earlier, because you were talking about um attachment. And I always remember, years ago when we first adopted, we heard about this thing called attachment, and we actually taught our social worker what attachment was, because he hadn't heard of it. And my social worker is listening, which there is a chance it's not you, it's the other one. But because
At
she's
number 7, 8, or 9.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But and it's a similar thing with this, isn't it? You know, there's kind of I think they watch until somebody says, yes, this is a real thing and you need to deal with it in this way and blah 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 blah. Um, but actually I think the world has changed a little bit in that respect as well, you know, whereas you, previously you would have waited to hear the official line on what this is and how you deal with it and stuff. And I think that, you know, there's enough
The groundswell, isn't there?
yeah, there's enough inquisitivity. Is that a word? No,
Yeah, yeah.
Inquisition.
social workers have an inquisitive nature. That's what I'm trying to say. And they will look,
Curiosity.
yeah,
Curiosity?
well,
Yeah.
yeah, it might be
Let's
pacing.
just go with that.
Yeah.
Oh, let's try that.
But yeah, I think there's that's become quite a big thing because I think social workers are tending to try and find something that's useful that's not in a book.
Yeah.
And
But
you know,
yeah.
it's not to say it'll work, but you know,
No.
as long as it's
I,
not going to do any harm.
I think what I am really keen for the profession to understand, and I remembered my point from earlier about interprofessional working, and I think it really is one of the strengths of social work to coordinate, bring people together. You know, as an older people's social worker, that's all I've ever done really is coordinate services, bring it together. There's a skill in that, there's a strength in that. I would love to have a care coordinator for my daughter because it would give me my life back in lots of ways. But I am the care coordinator for my daughter, and I feel that that's probably going to be the rest of my life. But shelving that, I think another thing that social workers, you know, I think what we can do is make a difference in that home with what we do and say, and that costs nothing. That
Yeah.
Absolutely.
costs nothing. And what I'm hearing parent carers saying is they're not asking for things, you know, from the social worker. They want more from the adoption support and special guardianship fund. They want, you know, they want funding from the local authority and resources and things. But from the social worker, they're asking for um compassion and empathy,
Empathy.
understanding,
Listening.
connection, you know, yeah, really listening, and not just we've taught you how to do reflective listening, so just repeat the last thing of what I said and it'll be okay.
Yeah.
So really being present with that person in their pain is a hugely challenging but necessary task, and that is where I feel we need to step in and step on board. And I'm not saying that's easy. I am not saying that's easy, but it costs nothing. It costs yourself
Absolutely.
something, but
Yeah.
nothing from resources. So that's
Absolutely.
my kind of hope really for the profession.
I am going to put a cap on this conversation because I think
You're
that
going
it
to
is,
end it. We could go on. Yeah,
well, an hour
We
and
probably
10.
could. We probably could
We,
go
probably
on
could.
for an
Can
hour.
we
um,
talk again with edit this bit with wine and possibly cheese for longer, you know. That would be good.
no, no. I mean, we'll press
22nd
stop,
of
but we
May,
can
either.
hang. Well, let's press stop and we'll hang around and have a quick catch up and just make a plan.
Okay.
Fab.
Okay,
Okay.
that would be
So
good. Yeah.
let me do it. Let me do a proper ending.
Yes.
So, Rebecca, clearly you have a lot to say. Scott has a lot to say, and I have a lot to say. This is a deep vein, a rich vein of thought and consideration that ain't going nowhere. So, but I want to thank you for coming on. When will your research be out?
So I am hoping to pass my Viva in February or March or maybe April of 2027. So after them, really. So not for a while. Sorry.
But well, it'll consume every waking moment between now and then, I'm sure.
Yes. It will.
And we will have you back on to discuss it before it goes out,
Yeah,
hopefully.
that would
Yes,
be really good.
please.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, please. That's wonderful. So thank you for coming on. It's been absolute pleasure. And Scott, as always, bon jovi.
Anchovy.